face in this regard.
Honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Mr. Chair, Prime Minister during the last election spoke about lifelong pensions and restoring lifelong pensions for veterans. In fact, he made that statement in Belleville. And one of the things that the Prime Minister said at that time, and I believe the Minister of Defence was standing behind the Prime Minister when he said it, and he said that no veteran should fight their government in court. And so I'd like to ask the Minister, does he agree with that statement?
Well, Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Chair, our Canadian Armed Forces members who serve, yes, they should not have to fight their government. That's why we're working very hard to making sure that our veterans have this. Our government is committed to making sure that we bring this option back, making sure we have the programs in place that look after not just the when it comes to the lifelong pension, but also to make sure that we have the other programs in place as well. It's not just about fixing one thing. We want to make sure this whole scene is done properly, Mr. Chair. This is one thing that we owe our veterans, and something that we do need to get right.
The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, it's an interesting answer, Mr. Chair, because the previous Minister of Veterans Affairs, who's now the member from Durham, halted the Equitas lawsuit. But even after the Prime Minister said what he said in Belleville, the Liberal government reinitiated the lawsuit in May of 2016. So my question to the Minister of Defence, if he believes that veterans should not bring their government to court, why was this lawsuit reinitiated by his government?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Chair, we're committed to making sure that we look after our veterans, but also, as the member bringing up the previous, that it was the veterans that actually launched the lawsuit during their watch. So why did that have to take place? Yes, we do need to fix this, and we're working very hard to making sure that we get this right. The Minister of Veterans Affairs has stated that he will be coming out with details on this option shortly later this year. He's working very hard. I'm also working hard together to making sure we get this transition piece right. It's not just about looking at one thing. We need to look at everything. And our veterans who have served we want to make sure that we don't have a band-aid solution, that we do get this entire piece correct.
Member for Barrie Innisfil.
It's kind of an odd answer, Mr. Chair, when he brings up the fact that it was the previous government that caused this. It was, in fact, the previous member of the Minister of Veteran Affairs who held the lawsuit in abeyance. And it was in May of 2016 that this government reinitiated the lawsuit with these veterans. And what's also funny about this, Mr. Speaker, is that the former Parliamentary Secretary for Veterans Affairs, the member from Canada Carleton, said in this House, when I asked the question in question period, her response was, "It is unfortunate that the group felt it had to continue the lawsuit." Is this how the Minister of Defence feels, that it's unfortunate, after what you just said, that these veterans had to reinitiate the lawsuit?
Remind the honourable members to speak through the chair. The honourable member for National Defence.
Mr. Chair, one thing I want to be able to pass on to this House and all to Canadians, that we remain committed, and the Minister of Veterans Affairs remains committed, our government remains committed to a pension for a life option, and it is in Budget 2017, and we outlined that we will announce further details later this year. This is a very important aspect that we do need to get right. I look forward to myself when the Minister of Veterans Affairs announces the details on behalf of our government.
Honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Minister of Defence helped write the platform that claimed they would bring back the lifelong pension to veterans. So I'd like to ask the Minister, what was your understanding when you wrote the platform, when he wrote the platform, of what was meant by bringing back lifelong pensions for our veterans?
The Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Chair, when it comes to looking after our veterans, and one of the reasons I also got into politics is making sure that we give the necessary tools to our men and women who have served our country. We are committed to bringing back the pension for life option, but also we need to make sure we look after all the other programs as well. Having the choice between this option, but also the lump sum payment, because we also have older veterans as well who have different needs as well. So we want to make sure that the two options are done well, educated as well, so that the veteran can make an educated choice to the needs for what better suits them and their families.
The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
You see, Mr. Chair, that's where the confusion lies, because the government is now talking about a lifetime pension option, and that was never the promise that was made by the Prime Minister, nor was it something that the Minister himself was promoting. The Minister was, in fact, a key outreach to CAF veterans. In fact, he and the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs for Canada-U.S. Relations did speak to a group of 800 in BC just prior to the election and said that it's essential to fix problems of restoring the lifelong pensions for veterans. And when the Minister said that, he was certainly talking about restoring, at least it was an understanding among those in attendance, of fully restoring lifelong pensions, not as an option. And so my question to the Minister, is he going to stand by the pledge that he wrote for his government, or is the return to lifelong pensions just an option that, when amortized, could mean only a few $100s a month for our veterans? Is that the sacred obligation that he speaks of?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Chair, our government is committed to the veterans. I think it'd be prudent to allow the Minister of Veterans Affairs to be able to come up with the proposal and the plan on behalf of our government. I too look forward to that. I'm working very closely with the Minister of Veterans Affairs so that our veterans are looked after, and not just from those options, but also to looking at the other challenges that our veterans also face as well. So job transition is just one of them. Thank you.
Honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
So again, as we speak about the return to lifelong pensions, and I want to make this very clear, Mr. Chair, that was never the issue during the election. It's understood broadly and widely within the veterans community. In fact, I would suggest that's why many veterans supported the Liberal government, was because they spoke about the return of lifelong pensions, not an option for lifelong veterans. But I also want to talk about this, again, in reference to the lawsuit. Why is the Minister of Defence interested in suing or having the government continue to pursue the lawsuit of the very same CAF members that they claim to support? And why won't he tell the Prime Minister to drop this lawsuit against Equitas?
The Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Chair, this is one obligation that our government needs to get right, and we're working very hard in this regard. Minister of Veterans Affairs has been given a mandate to making sure that he looks after the veterans. That's also one of the reasons why he's also my associate minister, so that we can get the transition piece right, Mr. Chair. And as I tell the member opposite, when the Minister of Veterans Affairs announces on behalf of our government, we will present our plan that we as a government will be looking after our veterans.
We have 1 minute left. The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, I hope, Mr. Chair, that involves dropping the suit, and it also involves what the Prime Minister promised when he stood up in Belleville and spoke about the return of lifelong pensions for veterans, not the option of a lifetime pension.